All right, so Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulna. Welcome everybody to our Islamic Finance Podcast. And today we have a special guest, Brother Mustafa Aydemir. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Alaikum salam. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us from Malaysia now. I see you have beautiful daytime still there. It's a night here in Melbourne. And as most of our listeners know, before we start, just to make sure that this episode is most enjoyable for all of us, we have a little bit of a simultaneous sip. So I have my coffee, and Brother Mustafa prepared some tea, and it's Turkish tea.
That's correct.
So, Bismillah, we say 3, 2, 1, Bismillah.
Bismillah.
Alhamdulillah, very good.
Alhamdulillah.
Coffee makes, and the tea, I learned somewhere I read that tea, in terms of consumption, Turkey is number 1 in the world.
Probably. We have a cup of tea around every 1 hour, 1 cup. That's it
amazing.
Eight cups per day, which is then a record in the world. I read that too.
I had today Turkish tea. I had a little bit of actually nice shish kebab in beautiful Turkish restaurant here. Went with my daughter, Miriam, who normally does a podcast with me. And we had nice tea and some baklava. So the baklava was amazing. Some people know how to do it very well. I know that they have a lot of different techniques. All right.
So the Turkish tea is very important. You have this double pot, right? The Turkish semaver, we call it. And the trick in the semaver is you have the tea with the leaves in the top and the cooking water in the bottom. And then the tea leaves never cook. There is never cooking water because the cooking water over time makes the tea bitter. But if you keep it just at the right temperature with the steam that's coming from the below, that keeps the tea taste for hours the same without getting bitter.
Yeah, that's.
But you as a Bosnian, you know that.
Yeah, I do. We use the same kind of technique, but it's Turkish. We usually mix it, but that's a unique, I think, Turkish way. And then you can, of course, make it a bit stronger or weaker depending on the taste. So for us today in the podcast, we are in the 3rd season. We are talking a little bit about earning a livelihood and everything to do with that aspect of our lives. We are generally following the book by Imam Muhammad Shaybani for this season. And from time to time, I have some guests who talk a little bit and expand on that idea. So for our listeners, Brother Mustafa he's got very colorful life, rich with experience from different areas that will be very interesting for our discussion today. And just for few information, and then maybe you can fill the details. You are currently senior investment analyst at Saturna, which is investment firm with over $5 billion in assets under management, which is originally headquartered in USA. What is it, before I go into other areas of your rich biography, what is your current role? What does it mean to be senior investment analyst? And what do you actually do? What does that mean, current job?
Right. So thanks for that. I am working for a great company. It's called Saturna. It's an investment firm. And we run some of the biggest Islamic funds in the world. The well-known ones are the Amana funds, the Amana Gross and the Amana Income, 2 big funds in the $1 billion range. I think the biggest is $2.5 billion with the Amana Gross. And if I'm not mistaken, that's the biggest Islamic fund in the world. And how an investment firm with mutual funds work is we have like 3 or 4 different categories of people, or departments, if you like, in general. There's the research people, and then the fund management people. This is the core business, if you like. And then you also have fund management operations. That is like redemption, money coming in, money coming out, accounting, all of those operational aspects. And then you have the advisory team that is client facing. And then we have, of course, IT and HR and things like that. In total, we have around 100 employees globally, but we have two major operations. One is in the US and one is in Malaysia. And the Malaysia one has only 12 employees. And it is catering for all the clients that we cannot manage out of US. So the US funds are regulatory-wise limited to the US residents and US green card holders and citizens. So even Canadians cannot invest in those funds. So we have a subsidiary in Malaysia that caters for international clients. Most of our clients are international, Malaysian, Australian, and so on. And we also manage institutional money that is outside the US. So we have clients like banks from the Middle East. IDB is one of our clients, and a bank in Kuwait. The Australian superannuation was our client until recently. So they would come to us and say, here's a bunch of money, 1 billion, 50 million, whatever, right? $5 million. Please manage it for us, grow it for us. And my role in this operation changed over time. I'm with them now about 6 years, maybe a little bit longer. I was hired as a fixed income analyst, as a sukuk specialist in Malaysia. So I was writing opinions or reports on various sukuk. Saudi sukuk, Malaysian sukuk, UAE sukuk, wherever you can find fixed income products in Islamic finance. I was looking at them. It was a very tedious work. And then we have different, like my report must include financial analysis mainly. Then we also look at the risks. And then finally, we look at the ESG ratings, which means we do our own ESG ratings since a very long time. And when all three show potential or less risk, then we would suggest it to the portfolio managers. And an investment firm would have a core recommendation list of securities that portfolio managers can choose. And once a security is promoted into the recommendation list, it's upon the portfolio managers to choose and build their portfolios. So my role was a fixed income analyst at the beginning, and later, because we are so small, I do like a little bit of IT. I have IT background as well, so I whenever there is like a project related to IT, online portal, things like that, then I'm the prime candidate to be appointed. But also, we'll talk about it hopefully later. I love communicating with clients. That keeps you, connected to the outside world. So more and more, I moved into the high net worth client communication advisory role, and we don't have that appointment yet. But it's fair to say I'm the head of the retail strategy at Saturna. I take care of the high net worth clients. Anything related to them, they want to, communicate this investment strategy that they would like to follow, or evaluate what potential other investment opportunities are there. Then they would come to me.
So, what did you find with, let's say, high net worth clients? We are talking about individuals or institutions?
So I cover only the individual investors. Institutional is a different department, but I'm also handling all the Arabic-speaking peninsula, North Africa and the Middle East. Turkey, whenever there is an institutional client from there, I am their go-to person, single point of contact. And what they usually aim for is a specific return on invest on an annual basis, and we
Mm-hmm.
try to identify how to provide that to them.
Is there a typical request, like they have a number or asset class in mind, or what's the typical conversation with high net worth individuals that you have?
So we usually talk about three areas, Almir. Number one is market outlook, what's happening. Is the world collapsing, or is it like opportunities that are missing? FOMO is a topic sometimes. That's like all related to current developments around the world. Mainly central bank interest rates, money printing, crisis, trade issues between America and China currently, things like that. Or the crypto is a topic, right? They say like, hey, it's going up like crazy. Do I miss out? Is this halal? Is this haram? Is this jaiz? And that's also something I keep on asking you. So that's one area. The other area is related to their performance. They would tell me what I'm earning is not enough. Can we add some more risk, right? Maybe for the younger generations, investment firms like us have a lot of opportunities to invest based on risk. So somebody who's like risk averse, usually older people or less wealthy people, they would go for a medium risk strategy that would entail probably what the pension fund gives you. They want to beat that. In Malaysia, for example, that's around 5%, 5 to 6%. And then, somebody who can take on more risk, younger people, they would go for a growth strategy that would probably ideally beat the mother of all indexes, which is the S&P 500, and that gives an annualized return of around 8% in US dollar. So these are around the numbers. If we can beat them, we are very happy. But every investment fund that we have, regulatory-wise, must have a benchmark. So our internal objective is basically to beat the benchmark. But because I'm talking to clients, that's often not enough. They would say, hey, the overall market is going 10%, you give me only 8%, why? And then it's not enough to beat the benchmark.
So they ask you about the environment, all of the question, what's happening. Then they ask you about specifically risk-return sort of relationship. And what did you say was the last one? The last
one is we didn't talk about it. The last one is their personal situation at this point in time. An example is a Chinese Malaysian client. By the way, we do only Islamic investing here in Malaysia. We have a license only for Sharia compliant operation. But believe it or not, half or maybe even more of our clients are non-Muslims. And that's also the case for our American operations. So what they would basically tell me, like an example is this Chinese guy. He would say, I want to retire. I work for McKinsey. Right now I have this much money, but my retirement goal is, let's say $5,000 a month. I want to retire. Is this money enough, or do I need to top up with my personal account until I reach that portfolio objective?
So that's quite interesting, I think, for a lot of our listeners, younger people, to see the mind of somebody who is very wealthy and how their mind is working. They are not just jumping into investment because of what they see in the media, but if I understood you correctly, they want to first understand terrain. And that reminds me of the Sun Tzu Art of War, who says that before any battle, you need to know the terrain, you need to know your enemy, and need to know yourself. In this way, they understand what they are getting involved with, what is the risk that they are facing, and also they are very mindful of their own situation, requirements, and what they actually need to get out of it. I think there is that idea out in the world where we see as these rich people who are investing, and as somebody who is just, they're getting lucky, and then they may be negligent, but people take care in very responsible way of what they are doing.
That's a very good point. Dealing with high net worth client taught me that they would seek professional fund managers rather than trying it themselves. And they would not think about, I can do it myself at all. They would think like, hey, my expertise is in oil and gas or in consulting or whatever, retail. But Saturna is my fund manager. So anything related to investments, they would choose a fund management company like ours or others, our competitors, and then they would handle their investments with them. But an insight may be interesting for you as well is like most of these big business people that I'm dealing with are splitting their wealth into two. That's very interesting for me. I learned it from them, right? So they have a family fund and they have their funds for the business. And with the business, they can do much more money than we do, right? They would go 30%, 40%, 50% profitability. They would invest $1 million only if they can get $2 million out, for example, in their business, right? And if it's like selling cake or trading coffee or whatnot, this is where they make the money. But when they make their money, like a layman would think, why would I give you money for just 5 to 10%? I can do 30%. But when there is a crisis, then they would like really decrease their business investment money a lot. So what they do is they slowly build up their family, if you want, wakaf, and then they keep it at a certain manageable risk with return. And this is how they live. And whatever happens to the business, this money is secure for their family.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. So you have like something that you live off. It's just your security, it's your base, it's your family. You don't want to stress and risk. And then you have something like a play money, which you can take more risk. And I think what I like in all of this, the question that they are posing, and that's some advice I heard some people give before, is that when you get financial advisor, get somebody who also educates you along the way. So they trust you, they give you, but I guess what they're seeking in return is that they get educated. And that seems to me what you're doing. So what do you see these days is a challenge in, let's say, for Saturna or investment firms these days?
That's a sophisticated question. We can probably remember all the mega trends that is happening in finance. One of them, probably the biggest theme, is sustainability. Being sustainable is very, very important. And we at Saturna started, alhamdulillah, very early with being sustainable. As you yourself know, Islamic finance is already a very sustainable model. But sustainable means different things to different people, right? So a women's right activist, for her, sustainable means a lot of women in the management, in the board. Or animal lovers, for them, sustainable means no animal testing. For conservative Muslims, sustainable is no interest, no riba, no speculation, right? Or follow my Islamic rules. Sustainable means different things to different people. This causes a challenge. There are no real standards in what is sustainable. Example is in Europe, interest can be sustainable if it's not too much. But in Islamic, it's absolutely not sustainable. We cannot have interest. So for them, sustainable in ethical finance, ethical banking does not necessarily mean it is sustainable for other people. So that's a challenge. Another challenge, if you allow me, is the entire move to robo advisory with a push of a button. You can download an app, and then it allocates some of your money, some of your savings into something you don't really know, you don't really care, as long as the information is presented in a nice way, in a nice chart. And then you say, I want to buy Apple. Boom, you have Apple. I want to buy Google shares. You buy Google. And then you want to buy crypto, and you just push the button and you buy crypto. That's really a challenge for us. The challenge is, are these investors taking on too much risk? Or is this like a form of gamification, right? It's like you're bored, you're sitting in front of your TV in the evening, you had a tough day, and you're like, let's see what my money made. Oh, it's too little. So let's take on some more this and that, right? So they don't really know what they're doing. I want to be careful in how I articulate that, but there is a tendency that they take on more risk than they should.
And looks to me, these robo-advisories, you are relying on some sort of algorithm to make number of decisions for you, and you are sort of just looking at a very generic sort of picture, and then you're choosing these portfolios which are already predetermined. I understand on one hand that's probably not something that, let's say, most of the serious investors would go for. I would think due to the low cost of the robo-advisory kind of services, automation, this is something that is appealing probably for new, youngish investors who just want to buy into the pool of like these ETFs or something, assets, and then feel that they are maybe starting. Like, do you think that something like that has its role in kind of getting people to start? And how far do you think people should go with these kind of automated services?
So there are good things and bad things in everything, as we know from the Quran. And there are good things to this. Some of them you just mentioned, right? It's like easy to start investing, which is a big, big plus. I'm a huge promoter of everyone should be in the market. Everyone. We are really losing out if we are not invested in the stock market, but not what our parents used to think about. The stock market is like a gaming platform. It's like roulette, it's like a casino. No, we're talking about ownership in companies. Ownership in companies that you know, that you trust, that you like, that you can identify yourself. So with these robo apps, you can easily participate. So it's an inclusive strategy. It's inclusion. It's great, right? And the commissions are quite low. The commissions are low, even zero, right? The tendency goes to zero commissions. So one should ask himself or herself, how is this even possible not to pay any commission? How do they make the money? Same like Google, we didn't know for like 10 years how a nice, clean website could make billions of dollars until we understood the business model of Google. And Facebook the same. Facebook was just this cool, social something we didn't understand 10, 20 years ago. I opened an account at Facebook, on Facebook, like 2007, I checked yesterday. And I'm not using it. It's like so boring. You uploaded pictures in the past for other people to see. Now it is like a business platform, right? So they make money with big data. Are the robo-advisories making money with your data is the big question. Another challenge for using robo-advisories is they would put your money into what they think is good, right? Let's say ETFs. And in ETFs, a Muslim has to be careful, and a normal vigilant investor as well, because in an ETF, usually all stocks of a certain index is there. And this can be a bad company as well, right? A company that you wouldn't invest in a normal time or after analysis, or non-Sharia compliant stocks would be in such an ETF. And Islamic ETFs, unfortunately, are still not very common.
Where do you see this general use of technology? What would be your advice for a younger person, how to get started, let's say?
See, the trend is lower fees. So I would start with that, right? Look at how much fees you can save. That's usually something people overlook very easily. Funds usually charge sales fees in the beginning, meaning you invest $1,000, they charge 5% sales charge. Then in your portfolio, in your account, it just shows $950. And then you want to take out your money, they charge another 1%, 2%. So without doing anything, you already lost in the first 1 or 2 or 3 years, 2% each year. So no fees is actually a good thing, or low fees is a good thing. But long term, this is here to stay, is part of automation, autonomous handling, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so on. So I hope, I'm rather optimistic when it comes to future technologies. And I think if an app on my phone would, from all my activities, see what is my actual risk and neutrally, without like benefiting any company, allocate my resources in a portfolio that optimally or perfectly matches my risk profile based on my age, based on my experience, based on my income, and so on, then it would be a great thing, right?
How do you assess this risk?
So when we talk about risk, we have to clearly differentiate that we are talking about an investor's own risk profile. The KYC, yeah, know your customer. So that is like your risk level, or the risk level that you can absorb, that you can take on. And that's easy to calculate with like the 5, 6, 7 basic questions of risk management, right? So basically it would be a measure of how risk averse you are, and if you can take on more risk but you're not, meaning you're losing out. So without going into more detail, it's basically what we said earlier, based on your age, your income, disposable income kind of elements, has nothing to do with the overall market except your employment security, job security.
How do you match your personal then to the outside world?
We have different asset classes. Stocks is one asset class. It has a certain risk. And then you divide the stock risk, the equities risk, into developed markets and developing markets. And let's just take the developed markets, the Western market, European market, and American market, or North American market is one. You take that market stock and then split it into 3 again, right? It's like blue chip stocks, medium-sized stocks, and small caps. And you have the same 3 for developing markets. You have big blue chips in Malaysia. They are very small, to be honest. And then you have medium cap and small cap stocks in Malaysia, or Indonesia for that matter, or Vietnam. So now you already have 3 and 3, meaning 6 different risk categories. And all of these categories have a statistical probability of achieving certain performances per year based on historical evidence. Developed markets have the mega index called S&P 500. We want to beat that, and that is around 8% over the last 100 years. So if blue chips in a developed country like America can perform 8%, that's a benchmark for us. Meaning then we would match if your profile is suitable for that risk or not. And if yes, you should be in that market. If you like keep cash only in your bank account, that gives you 0% return or 1% return or 2% return, and you can have 8% return in America or in a developed country somewhere, then you should, participate from the 8%.
You have very, very deep experience in a lot of different areas, and you work in management consulting, in software technology industry, also oil and gas. You're now PhD candidate at Institute of Islamic Banking and Finance in Malaysia. You are deputy president of Musiad Malaysia. Musiad is what I understand like a business association that is connected with investing and connecting businesses or opportunities for doing trade and business with Turkey. And you are also vice chairman of the Merger and Acquisition Committee in Turkey. So looking at that, and I want to get a little bit into your thoughts about what's happening in Turkey, but tell me, what sort of qualitative difference does your experience make in the decisions that you need to make?
Right. Good question, Almir. Only now I can start answering your question. What does it take to be an analyst? Is about two things, I would say. Maybe a bit simplified, but it is good to simplify things. Number one is you need to understand the world. So what education you did to understand the world and how the world works is helpful. That can be like, I want to put a hierarchy based on my own humble opinion, political sciences. Number two, or this is absolute number one, I would say, because it covers all areas, social, economic, socioeconomic, whatever you think. Like policymakers need to understand and have the intelligence to see what's going on. Not easy to be, tricked into some protest on the street and then you change your constitution. No, cannot be like that. So political science, number one. Number two, what other majors or studies would make you understand the world is economics, right? So is about unemployment, is about central bank policy, it's macroeconomic policy making that makes you understand the world. And if you want to add some more elements, is like you travel around the world, like you, Almir, or me living in several parts of the world for whatever reason. Can be migrating because of war, can be career, or can be just like backpacking around the world. That adds to your understanding the world, right? And then ideally, I usually tell young people when they ask me what to study, one major is not enough anymore. So the standard of studying only mechanical engineering is not enough anymore. Only finance is not enough anymore. You need finance and psychology, or engineering and something else. Okay, coding, software. At least show me two majors. If you can add 3 or 4, oh my God, you make yourself much more interesting for companies that need to hire you. And then think about analyzing the world to find megatrends, the future of energy, the future of infrastructure, a hyperloop or the boom, the jet they are just developing right now, innovating to zero carbon world, right? You need this multidisciplinary knowledge background in order to tackle the big problems of today's time. And number two, maybe very simple, and I stop there, is you need common sense. Common sense. You need to think just basic logic. Is this possible or not? And a big example of that is Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett never invests in something that he doesn't understand. Or if it doesn't make sense to him, he just says, forget about it. So that's really common sense. His success is based on common sense.
What would you say are today some of the big economic/technology trends that you are noticing?
Almir, I think I would mention the same trends that you are concerned with, everyone is concerned with. Like the number one of all right now is probably climate change or the climate crisis. I truly believe within the climate change, we need a significant change of behavior by the entire world population to tackle that issue. And this includes all disciplines, from technological advancements, autonomous driving, connected living, our metropolitan areas becoming bigger and bigger and more connected. Hyperloop is a reality, right? I think, what used to be like a 5-hour travel by air, going to be like 30 minutes with Hyperloop. It's going to be like a metro within the city, right?
Are you talking about fast trains or those underground railways, or what is that? What does that mean?
Hyperloop is a technology that is connecting, I would say, 2 big metropolitan areas in minutes. That can be looking like a train or whatnot. It's basically a transport. It's like the next level of transportation. And it does not
similar to
involve
what Elon
flying.
Musk is doing with his company?
Correct.
When he's digging those tunnels and stuff?
Right. So, yes, he coined the word Hyperloop, but it's not Elon Musk's technology or his patent, right? It's basically, it means a train or a transport mechanism from Paris to London in 10 minutes, or from London to Copenhagen, even under the channel, in 30 minutes without stop, right? Think about 20 years from now, 10 years from now, it's already working. And this is something not a one company can do. It's like government infrastructure building. It's like the roads, if you want. And what would happen if we do this is we would reduce carbon emissions a lot, and we would basically connect huge metropolitan areas without traffic jams. Things like that, just to name a few. But this is probably a mega trend that will change how we travel in the future.
So when it comes to climate change, obviously we know that we are emitting and fossil fuels, and we see a lot of activism around it. What is the technological solution, and what is generally solution that you see investment world is focusing on when it comes to this particular challenge?
So, Almir, I will say something now. Let me start with this. Maybe a bit controversial, I tell you, but I think
we like controversial. That's good.
I truly believe, I'm totally convinced that we should start protecting our oceans. Number one, by far, I truly believe that no technology, no nothing is required to change the climate back to better terms, right? Let's say normal operation. And that is by reducing our seafood intake. My number one recommendation to all people out there would be reduce eating fish, reduce eating seafood. And I say that maybe people who did their own research will understand, but anybody who is hearing this for the first time, please do your research. The oceans are on the edge, really, and they are the biggest protector of the planet in terms of clean air, regeneration of the damaged air and green, and so on. So, like, I truly believe we often miss out that eating fish or seafood in general is really bad for the environment. And the reason is not that fish is bad, but is about total overfishing. And I would claim, or I'm really convinced, that in the seafood industry, corruption and overfishing and lobbyism is so hidden that we are totally missing out on seeing what's going on under the water. That's my number one concern. And you can see already I'm very passionate about it.
I can see you're very passionate.
Yeah. So that's the number one recommendation I have.
Is that, I wonder if that is coming because you more, is that in where you are main problem? Because I would imagine a lot of countries, like when I think about a lot of countries, the fish is not traditionally part of a diet. Maybe in some other country, they eat, let's say, consume too much chicken, which is then grown with these antibiotics and steroids, and then the chicken is really fake chicken and therefore unhealthy. And maybe in a similar way, we have seen a few decades ago mad cow disease, when they would feed the cows with the crushed bones and the cows would turn crazy and you had diseases. So obviously, in certain other areas where the fish is a big part of a diet, I recognize that there is a problem of overfishing and unsustainable fishing, which, as if I understood you correctly, damages that ecosystem. And I remember from the school days, I don't know if that's correct, but they used to tell us that the oceans are the lungs of the earth. Basically, the oceans produce oxygen and do all of the heavy lifting. Other than fishing, like, how else do you think we are damaging the ocean, let's say? What is it that we are specifically doing to environment and to the ocean that is causing the problem?
Okay, so first of all, Almir, the first part of your question, it has nothing to do with specific regions. It is a global problem that we are overfishing. It has nothing to do with one country. It is basically complete, all 7 oceans. You are like with a ship fishing boat nowadays. Chinese fishers are caught off the coast of Nigeria, fishing in waters that are prohibited from fishing. And they do this overnight. And how they fish is the problem. Like, one technique of fishing is like they put the nets on the ground and just pull everything from the ground. Think about the Great Barrier Reef. Like, overnight, the Great Barrier Reef is not there anymore. It's a problem like that.
So they are scraping entire vegetation and everything. So there is like carpet bombing the whole region.
And they do this every day of the year. And the ships are so big, they're like tankers, not like the past. And just think about the ground being like one bulldozer here, one bulldozer there. You know how a green field or football field would look like after 10 minutes? And that's
absolutely
one of the major problems. And what does it cause is basically so scary. And what it's causing is, including the ice melting in the Arctic and Antarctica, is the reflection of the sun. The reflection of the sun is coming from the oceans that are not too dark. But the more you scrap, and the more ice is melting, I really want to apologize, I'm not a biologist, but the reflections of the Earth is getting lower and less and less and less. So global warming becomes a rapid and exponential growing problem that we have. So,
wow.
And
just we don't watch, see any of
if
it.
you don't know anything, just watch a few Netflix. Yeah, just watch a bit of Netflix, David Attenborough and our Earth and Planet Earth and stuff like that.
I think what's interesting is that we have this a lot of investors now who are almost like voting with their dollars, and they are pushing a pressure in terms of values and ethics that they see being reflected in the company that they are investing. Is the rise of these activist investors something that you see in the industry that is it shifting performance or direction of the companies?
Activist investing is what we call smart money. I am a personal fan of activist investing or activism in general. But what they do, usually who are the activist investors that come into your mind is the hedge fund managers, right? It is like the big 5, 10 big shots from the US, that what they do as a modus operandi is they would take a significant stake in a company, minimum 5%, maybe sometimes more, and then they would place 1 or 2 board members and help the company changed direction. And what they would do is like they would do their own research and would say, you should merge with that company. If you don't do that, you are destroying shareholder value. But they do this only to benefit themselves, which is fair in a capitalist system. But wouldn't it be great if we can do activist investing towards a better world?
And I guess it comes down to what you believe in. People who believe in certain things, like I could imagine if you have a very strong position, let's say on fishing and how it's done, and you are very aware and you follow that, and then when you're making these kind of decisions, those decisions will reflect that value. What do you discuss in your PhD when it comes to these issues? Like, is there a higher benchmark than just, okay, this passed some Sharia compliant filters, but like, here is another target? I mean, I'm asking you this because I'm thinking in terms of the leadership. Where does the leadership comes into this picture? Like, what is the next beyond just what is halal, let's say?
Totally understood. So let's try to understand what ESG investing is and how we apply it. Then leadership is like the main role in this. So how it works theoretically, like now I'm an academic head-on, is the better you follow sustainable criteria, the better will be your performance in the stock market. Why is that? It is because you're managing certain risks better than other companies. Over time, this leads to ultimately better performance in the stock market, right? And think about oil and gas companies. They are taking on more environmental risk. But when they blow up, and they make a lot of money, but when BP in the Gulf of Mexico blows up one of their platforms, the entire company's value drops by 50%. Right? Over time, you want to avoid such risks. So sustainable investing or ESG investing is like to identify a certain risk in the environmental area, social area, and governance area. And when you talk about leadership, then you talk about the governance. And corporate governance is defined by how a company directs and controls its resources, right? So when you, it's fair to say if you have a good corporate governance structure in a company, that's the main key issue or key differentiator to other companies, your peer companies, to outperform over time. And some of the metrics maybe so that our audience can understand what we are talking about. In governance alone, ESG, the G stands for the G factor, corporate governance, is who is in your board. And these people, like let's say 20%, 30, 50%, would be able to bring in an outside view that is not blind within the company anymore. Usually who's sitting in the board is like the CEO, the ex-CEO, the ex-ex-CEO, or connected people, shareholders, and they're like so long in the board that they often don't see what's going on outside, or they miss out on checks and balances because everybody knows everybody and his son is working with my son and so on.
Becomes so like an echo chamber of the same sort of views are repeated.
Yeah, one element is board composition. We cover it on the board composition. And board composition can be divided by how many women are in the board, foreigners are in the board, different education backgrounds in the board. Think about only lawyers, only 70 years old or higher, and only white men. Make a different decision than some young people from Europe and from Middle East and from Asia, women and men, engineers and accountants and lawyers mix, right? So the more diverse the board is, the more likely decision-making is better quality. And this ultimately translates into long-term performance. So my PhD is about really putting numbers behind these theories and checking if somebody with a more diverse board, which I can catch by the numbers, is outperforming their peers in terms of, I look at the banks, so in terms of non-performing loans, in terms of stock market, in terms of whatnot, efficiency basically. And then you have other elements in, like lobbyism. Is the company paying lobbyists, politicians or not? If yes, you should avoid these companies because a government change can make them underperform. So lobbyism is another thing. Or executive pay, right? How aligned is the board strategy with the executive incentive strategy? We are looking at these data points. And believe it or not, inside Saturna, we do this with financial technology or fintech. We basically write code to measure and give us a G score, an S score, an E score. And over time, we are refining these metrics and come up with a sustainability rating.
Turkey is a very interesting country. Last couple of decades specifically, with a change of the direction of the country, focus, development, a country really investing in its resources, building its capacities, in the independence. It's a geopolitical player. It's a humanitarian player. We see not just hard industries, manufacturing, technology, defense, automation, food. We see also exporting series and entertainment, soft power. What has happened in last 2 decades in Turkey?
Thanks for asking this question. I never lived in Turkey myself. I was born and raised in Germany. So probably more unbiased than some of the Turks you would talk. And you know Turkish people, right? They're into really baskets. Either they would adore the current leadership or they totally hate the current leadership. But let's be more economic driven or macroeconomic driven on what's happening in Turkey. And there are a couple of things, right? So number one, I would say as an observer, I'm proud to be a Turk, which I was not before, right? When you were looking at Turkey in the past, in my childhood, it was like not something you want to look up to. There was like not a good football, and there was not a good economy, and no good products that were coming out from there. So why was that? If we look back now and compare with today, there was nothing, literally nothing, in terms of identity that would improve my self-confidence. My identity with Turkey would not help me be a more confident person. When I look now, I am getting confidence out of the Turkish strengths, the Turkish rise of Turkey, the rise of the strategy. And how did this guy, if you want to name a group of people, a very small group of people, including Erdogan, and some of their closest, companions, how did they do it? Is with a vision, with a vision that tells you we want to be like this, and they're painting the picture colorfully. They have a vision 2075, Almir. They have a vision 2050. They have a vision 2023. So they are going towards those visionary ideas where you check yourself and like, do I want to be part of this? Yes, definitely I want. Right? Do I want to contribute towards that vision? Yes, I want. And suddenly you have this emotional connection. That's their biggest success, Almir. And those visions are so attractive and so ummah-driven, right? Not like Turkey-driven at all. Maybe a little, because self-interest starts first. You need to protect what you have In order to grow them, you need to understand, you need to measure, only then you can manage. The vision became so attractive that a lot of non-Muslims, a lot of non-Turkish people are also hooked to those visions, including the Balkans, including Pakistan, including a lot of diaspora in Europe love the Turkish dream when it's really happening, right? And the social dilemma points me to a lot of hurdles that we need to cross until we are getting there. But there is a vision, right? I just wanted to read, I picked up some of the visions here. Turkey will become the top 10 economy, one of the top 10 economies. GDP will be more than $1 trillion, which is probably one of the biggest in Europe, or $2 trillion in a couple of years. We have a per capita income vision of $25,000, which points to the higher middle class. We have an export economy of minimum 500 billion exports, foreign trade volume. So all these numbers just on the economic front. And then you have others, I just picked them up from foreign policy, no conflict with the neighbors. We want to have close relations with the 10 largest economies in the world. Healthcare, 100% healthcare participation, women, workforce participation of whatnot. 500 million visitors, 50 million visitors per year, and so on, right? So all these very detailed visions attract people, right? Not only to connect emotionally with the country, but also ask themselves, hey, there is something I want to be part of. How can I contribute to this? And I want this for my country as well. So if I'm part of this, my country will also be covered. Think about the Balkans, right? And then what happened as a consequence is the so-called megatrend reverse brain drain. So people are now moving to Turkey. My best friends from Malaysia who work in senior positions, some of them are with you and me in the Islamic Economic Forum, they're calling me, right, saying, we are settling now in Istanbul. I say, why? And they say, why are you asking? You should come with us, right? Why are you in Malaysia, not in Turkey? So they're making me question my decision to settle in Malaysia 10 years ago in revisiting my strategy. And another mega trend is happening in terms of middle class. So if you add these mega trends together, Turkey becomes a very interesting case study for a lot of people to be hooked up to.
I often say to...
Does it make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. I often, when I speak with some of my friends, when we follow the politics, whenever there is election in Turkey, whether it's a local election for the small area like mayor seat or something like that, or it's a main election, we often follow it here. We come next to our mosques and we watch in the morning, usually around Fajr time. We watch the results and everybody, you have a Bosnian, you have Somalian, you have Arab, you have Pakistani. And I turn to them and I say, why is it that we have nothing to do with Turkey or elections? Not going to benefit and in any way. Like we don't have a jobs there, we don't have anything. Why is it that we are following? And there is something that resonates with us in the direction of the country and what the leadership is doing. And it, as you mentioned, it makes us proud to see the vision, to see the country and economy being driven in the direction that I often think what specifically it's bringing up, and it's some kind of a leadership that you stand with your own values, with your own faith, you're proud of your tradition, but also you are building a sense of independence. And so when we see a Turkey that wants to be independent, proud of who they are, there is something there. There is something there that resonates, because I guess what more and more, especially as a Muslims we see in our countries, is that appetite for independence and strength, where your values guide you. It's not very clear in many of our countries. And so when we see, for example, Turkey, like especially we discuss, let's say, last war in Azerbaijan, when they were really decisively won with the use of the homemade drones, and defense independence, I think in Turkey is now in 70%. Like, just when you see these kind of indicators, the country is building itself. It's very strong. It is creating very good relationship with neighbors. In terms of refugees, you're talking about millions of refugees that it accommodates, gives them healthcare, gives them shelter. And I know even in Bosnia how many humanitarian projects are financed with Turkey, how many businesses. If any other country in the world has done on humanitarian grounds, on economic grounds, on education grounds. My daughter studied there, learned Turkish and Arabic in Turkey, in Istanbul. If any other country has done and survived the coups and troubles and building from the cars to infrastructure to, if anyone else in these 2 decades has done like that, they would be celebrated. And I always think that the world does not today yet trust Muslim leader with that amount of power, like we see in the Turkey. Simply, I feel it's a part of Islamophobia that we see that whenever Muslim comes with the power and the state comes, elects its leadership and goes in the right direction, it's a stable pillar of the security and safety of the world. Immediately there is a speculation, there is a fear, like he is called the names and he is scrutinized what is going on. But I see that sense of pride, it's resonating. I guess more Muslims want to see in their own leaders somebody who is very clear what they believe in, calling to the right things, and serving the country, inspiring that, and building independent nation. So I think that's something very, very interesting when I see in Turkey.
So, Almir, allow me to just name 2 or 3 guiding principles that I relate Turkey's rise and attractiveness to the Muslim world. It is nothing new, right? So, number 1 is justice. It is always pointing towards justice. Turkey, the new Turkey, how they call it, is never quiet. There is a global event happening and they talk justice. Maybe they cannot, at least they say it, right? They say it out loud. What's happening in Gaza is absolutely wrong. They say it. And it's surprising that not many countries have the dignity to say it, right? They are just quiet. They are just quiet. That leads me to the second guiding principle, which is really dignity. So we miss out, or we missed it in our hearts so much. What is justice? So they are trying to give it to us. Or it's there, right? It's graspable, grabbable. And then the second thing is, think about the old Turkey. 100 years, almost 100 years, 90 years plus, Turkey was humiliated after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. Who are you? Shut up. What are you producing? What is coming out of Turkey other than inflation or stupid stuff, right? You're just a low-cost travel destination, right? What do you want? Kind of humiliation. And now we can see a dignified leadership. He doesn't shut up. The 1-minute famous talk in the World Economic Forum. And then in order to speak justice, you need security and safety, and you need independence. And you need an independent, defense strategy.
Yeah.
And if there's
Absolutely.
injustice in your neighboring house in Azerbaijan, you help them. You take sides. You don't say like, well, I'm really sad, but what can I do? This is unacceptable for Turkey, and they are saying it. And this is what makes it interesting. It's like a movie, right? It's like the resurrection movie. You don't know why, but anybody who's taking money and being a traitor is like, oh, how could he take the money? Doesn't he have dignity? Right? And this is the feelings, that the emotions that we are sharpening again in the Muslim world, sharpening again among 2 billion Muslims. And Turkey plays its role, and it plays a good role. And there used to be a vacuum in that area, and they're filling the vacuum. And of course, it's not all perfect right now. A lot of things to do, but it's for everyone to decide if they're on the right direction.
Yeah, I think just to finalize with that, and that's where I think for me leadership is in terms of economy. I see Turkey really producing results. I was there just before Corona when that massive airport opened that can accommodate. I think that once it's at full capacity, it will be the largest airport in the world in terms of yearly movement.
200 million passengers per year.
I mean, so many mega projects, even in terms of the healthcare. I know a lot of people who are going there for treatment. People investing in real estate, people investing in all kinds of technology. I think, I often look at the Muslims' Islamic economy, which is mainly built on just consumers' economy. Many of our main so-called hubs of Islamic finance are simply reduced to shopping centers where other people come to sell what they're producing. And this is where I see the game-changing strategy from Turkey, where the Turkey is now producing really everything that we are consuming. So yes, we are starting from behind, like just thinking of that electric car that Turkey is. That was a consortium, I think 4 or 5 different companies coming together to produce the car. These are not small things. You were sending me some of the semiconductor projects that are happening, and you also sent me, I think, some of the videos talking about that industry. These are billions of dollars industry, very difficult to get in, but Turkey is taking on these very strategic industries. There is a semiconductor we talked about before, privacy, but there is a semiconductor in every device, from your basic and anything you can think of that runs electricity. There is a semiconductor, and producing them, it's a major strategic issue. Most of them, I think, in Taiwan produced, and so Turkey is taking on the very sophisticated. It's not just those simple low tech level project, but it's rising in terms of sophistication and the competence. And what do you think? What would be the leadership lesson for us to take from the Turkey, and also at the same time advice that you give to the listeners in terms of their own career development?
If I have to think about a few principles that we just talked, right? It's very attractive for me. If somebody's on the justice side, that's like a lessons learned for me, right? You need to be, whatever happens, you cannot compromise on justice at all, and dignity. But Turkey is also, like, think about all the enemies within the country already that hate the leadership, really literally hate. Do they do different policies with them? If you ask them, of course, yes. But if you look to their lives, it's very inclusive. It's very inclusive. So inclusivity is on the rise in Turkey. Also, female participation, she economy, right? So there is like services only for the women, like it should be in Islam, right? Women have their own last name, they have their own wallet or own wealth. You cannot take it away from them. We have female-owned companies that are successful, Almir. It's like I'm representing a company from Turkey. Allow me to do a marketing for them is Mimya. Mimya, I never heard of Mimya before. And then I bought a company in Malaysia for a small amount of money with somebody leaving the country. And then they were representing Mimya. So I had a call with the CEO. And it was such a strong personality lady out of Istanbul with hijab. She was like, boss, like a leader you want to just follow, right? With all my experience in Korea, I want to work for her kind of mentality or personality. So I'm talking about the rise of such personalities in Turkey is encouraged. Like all the processes showing that female leadership is developing at a rapid pace. And another good example, other than this lady I have personal experience, is Madam Ambassador of Turkey to Malaysia, Dr. Merve Kavakci. Her daughter's video is circulating on social media currently because she was the translator of the Biden-Erdogan meeting last week. And she was banned in the old Turkey, stripped of her citizenship just because she wanted to keep her hijab, and she won a regional election to be a member of the parliament. And then she had to leave the country. She was not Turkish anymore.
Because she entered parliament with the hijab at that time.
Correct. They said, if you do that, we're going to strip you from your citizenship. She walked in as the first lady wearing hijab into the parliament in the last 85 years, right? That was 20 years ago. Fast forward 20 years, she developed herself, did a PhD in America, became a lecturer at the Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Her father is a big scholar who initiated or started up a couple of schools in Texas. And then they came back to Turkey with the pardon of the president. And then she was asked or appointed as the first non-career diplomat position ambassador to Malaysia, one of the most strategic countries for Turkey's partnership in the region. And she's doing a great job. She is so amazing. Like, I'm such a big fan. You can hear it already. Okay, so I usually want these interviews or podcasts to have like a actionable recommendation for anyone who is listening and maybe take some lessons out of it. I recommend looking into your skill set, right? What is the most crucial skill or gift that makes or breaks a success? And that's, for me, like you mentioned it before, the skill of communication and the ability to understand others before being understood, right? So that's why I'm very much drawn towards the entire topic of communication between humans, between families, between societies, companies, mainly related to empathy, the ability to really listen to Almir Çolan, understand where he's coming from, what he wants to tell me, what is driving him, what are his emotions, and then, communicate and tell him what I want to tell him. So this ability can be learned, or this skill can be trained. And that's empathy. Empathy. I'm talking about, these moments where you sit in a meeting and you feel like, hey, immediately or very quickly what's going on between the participants, but you never met them before. But the guy next to you who invited you into the meeting, he has no clue what's going on, right? That's how I would define, anecdotally, what is empathy. And if you don't have that, that creates so much conflict and unhappiness in people, right? So you say something, the guy answers something completely different. Like, wait a minute, this is not what I want to talk about. I wanted to say something nice, but you misunderstood, right? So this all conflict can lead to real problems that are unnecessary and that is consuming, our energy on a daily basis. So I would recommend everyone to look into what is communication, how do you properly say A, and the guy sitting in front of you understands A and not B. And imagine like the most intelligent, well-educated guy, and nobody understands him. He doesn't have the ability to communicate properly or efficiently. So that's something I would highly recommend everyone to take as a friendly nasiha, as an advice to look into, and then think about the communication between man or humans to Allah, right? Which is covered in ibadat, right? So you talk to Allah, you thank Him, you ask things from Him. That's also communication. And your communication skill in empathy can be developed by ibadat, right? You're like, Allah, something very bad happened to me. Like, did I do anything wrong? Kind of question, right? To understand what Allah wants from you. Khushu or taqwa, right? And then we jump from man to Allah communication to man communication. And that is covered in Islam under the category of akhlaq, like adab, akhlaq, right? So how do I need to be with my parents? What are the requirements to being a good neighbor? How come like somebody can enter Jannah by doing a lot of ibadat, but is very bad with the parents, very bad with the neighbors. The wife is not happy, screaming around, always bad, negative. So akhlaq and ibadat are very much part of this communication I'm talking about. And then the last thing that we earn our money, partially Almir, you and me, in Islamic finance, is about the communication man to business. And when I say man, I mean humans, right? Human beings in the business world, meaning transactions. And this is covered in Sharia law under mu'amalat, right? Imagine somebody who's really good in ibadat, really good in his ahlak, but then he's cheating on the tax. He's not weighing his apples correctly. So we need ibadat, ahlak, and mu'amalat as the three pillars that drives the Islamic economy, the new generations in Islam, our younger brothers. And our responsibility is to talk about this communication issues that we should avoid. And I'll stop here. Thank you.
I wish to thank you very much for everything. And I'll put some links where people can reach you and connect with you on LinkedIn and maybe some other platform where you are available. And any other last words that you have for us for the end before we close?
Thank you to my Abi, my big brother. For me, you're a role model. We don't have many in the Muslim world. One of the big weaknesses we have is we need to look up to people. And role models need to know their responsibility for the younger people. You take care of me and other people like me. We like what you're doing, Almir. I want to thank you for having me in your podcast.
Thank you very much. And we really appreciate your time and wisdom, and we learn from it a lot. And dear listeners, thank you very much for your listening. And we hope, inshallah, to see you next week with a new episode. And if you have any suggestion, who would you like me to interview and topics you want me to discuss with them, please let me know. For now, that's all. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.